Yeah, good morning everyone. So I'm Kameshwari. I'm from the CSC department. That means what I'll talk to you about will be some software platforms. So I'll start out with this project, which is it is translating from seed to translation, but nonetheless it is in a shape where we are at that outreach stage. So I'll work out through idea to execution with respect to this project, and after I finish this I'll talk about the other project somewhat briefly because I didn't because it requires a lot of detail. I can't focus on two projects in depth. So I'll focus this on depth, that on breadth. So what is this project about? So we call this worldwide help. It's derived from World Wide Web, which all of you are aware of. So the idea is to provide help in a structure that is very similar to World Wide Web. I won't get into the similarity because that's another. So my background is in internet networks. So I see a lot of similarity between these, but that's a very technical talk. I won't get into that. So this is the outline of this talk. I'll start with where did the idea come from, how did we prototype, what field trials did we do, what lessons we learned, and how we are headed into the future. So what is this idea? So we know internet has had a significant impact on our lives. There is the World Wide Web is all this web browsing that you do using your computer. We use Google a lot, Quora, Facebook, so on. I mean, in fact, it's so much that we can't even imagine a life without internet. So someone within the family gets diagnosed with diabetic, the first thing we do is go to Google and start typing what is diabetes, what is the food management. I mean, it's so much, even my 6-year-old makes use of Google to gather information about the names that his sister calls. So he'll ask, okay Google, what does Git mean, because she calls him all kinds of names. So that's the impact of internet. But if you look at this bottom of the pyramid, which is a huge number in India, I mean, there is a very high cost of access. You require a device, you need internet connection, and more than that, there is also a need for digital literacy. I'm just not talking about English language literacy. It is when you Google, there's so much information that gets dumped on you. Even people who are tech savvy find it very difficult to navigate through it. So that's the issue. So the idea was fine, internet is there. I research in this internet. If you were to think of providing internet, which is by providing easy and cost effective information access to this bottom of the pyramid, what form will it take? So that was the germ of the idea. So then we decided, okay, let's see what the requirements are for making this a reality. So if you see, there are these information consumers who are the bottom of the pyramid who wants access to information. I mean, you may be wondering, Gayatri was mentioning this is in the education space. There's a lot of education you're doing by providing information access. So maybe that is how you can view this project. So these people are not very tech savvy. They don't have the digital literacy. So they are more comfortable if they can actually talk with someone and get that information. So this is what it is. So basically they will prefer voice call over some computer use because they don't have that technical knowledge to do that. Not just that, they are also poor. That means the solution that we design has to be low cost solution. So when we talk about these voice calls, we should ensure that they don't bear the burden of the money expense involved in the call itself. So you should think of some toll free or missed voice call kind of a model. Now when we say that they have to talk with someone, that someone becomes the information provider. These of course we are assuming there will be many, so you are kind of crowdsourcing this task to them. These are tech savvy. We assume they know how to handle computers, they are experts in some domain. So these can be NGO volunteers, government workers and so on. But one important thing here is when you are providing some information, lot of these people who are these information providers have a regular job as well. It's not that they are going to sit and handle whoever is calling all the time. So they should be able to help when they are free. So it's not that you have dedicated support, they have other careers. And when you are having a voice call, another important thing that we feel is important is that you don't want your phone number revealed to the other person as well. Otherwise, they'll keep calling you at all odd hours, bothering you with I want this, I want that, and so on. So this is also something you need to provide some privacy. So when we started out this idea, I mean, these are kind of okay, these are the requirements from this guy, these are the requirements from the information providers. Now based on these requirements, initial requirements by the way, how do we go about building the particular system? So this is the architecture. If you see within the space, there are basically three functionalities. One is query registration. Registration is someone wants an answer to a query, you are registering that query. Okay, and then query resolution, someone has to resolve that query by providing information, and basically this is a question answer. Then you need also a function of quality inspection whether the answer that is being provided is good or not. Okay, so roughly this information access can be divided into three of these tasks. Now whenever you are building, there are a lot of trade-offs. As designers, I think it's very obvious, whatever you do, the more cost it is, the more flexibility it provides and so on. So there is always the cost versus flexibility trade-offs. So this is just to illustrate the kind of things you have to think of when designing, because for example, query registration, when someone calls, do you want to provide an IVR menu? IVR menu is, you must have heard, right? There's press 1 if you want help for this, press 2, that is IVR menu. If you want to provide that, it will definitely help in better scheduling, because if they press 1, you know who to direct the call to, because whoever understands 1, you should direct the call to them. But then once you bring in an IVR, you have to pay that IVR provider to be providing that service. Okay, so if on the other hand, if it's a missed call model where there is no IVR menu, someone just gives you a missed call and then someone will call them back, then there is no cost involved. Okay, so so which model should we support? Similarly, when you talk about query resolution, even here there is cost versus flexibility versus speed. So let me just focus on speed. Whenever query resolution happens, you want the query to be answered as soon as possible. One way to do this is you do redundant allocations to multiple people as tasks, tell that, and whoever says okay I will attend to this call, you remove the tasks from others. So that kind of and then if they are not doing, you have to escalate, you have to give them periodic notifications to say okay these are tasks pending for you, please attend to them and so on. So that is with respect to query resolution. Quality inspection also, there are a lot of options possible. Do we check for every task? Do we do random tasks? That again depends upon the scale. Do we call back the client, or ask someone should actually physically call back, talk with the client, or support this also through the IVR. So there are many options. I mean, the high level picture is whenever you try to design something like that, there are many ways of doing it. You need to figure out which one is the right, there is no right or wrong also, in some trade-off. I mean, where are you going to go give more flexibility if it comes at a corresponding cost? What is the middle ground between both of them, and that is something you design. So this is just to illustrate that point. And of course, once you have this idea, you have this thoughts, you have some basic architecture, but you may have missed something. So it's good to always discuss it with a few others to see what they think of the idea, whether it is feasible, flexible. You may sometimes think, oh, I have this brilliant idea, but it often may also get shot down by others because you didn't think of something else, because it's not within your experience domain. So it's good to talk with a bunch of colleagues. So in this case, I spoke with some people in my department which provided technical input. I also spoke with people working in the social sector, because we are targeting the bottom of the pyramid. So this would include our faculty in humanities, TIS is the Tata Center, Tata Institute of Social Science. I spoke with some people there. It's good to also talk with some NGOs who are working with this, so that you get an idea. So basically, based on all this, fine, there is some merit to this idea. It looks like people are interested in this idea. That is when you go ahead, do a bare bone version. I underline the bare bone version because again there is a tendency, especially in academia, to get carried away by ideas. So you have this idea, you will think, oh, this complex, you like try to make it very complex because it's more exciting, very novel, and then you start prototyping this very complex thing which takes lot of effort, time, and then later you realize that there are no takers for that complexity. So it's very important to go with this simple stuff and iterate over it based on what the input is coming from the field. So this I have, so there is this principle called KISS. Everyone knows what KISS principle is? Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, so that is what it is. So, so we tend to, at least I always start simple. Only complexity I try to address it only if it is really required. Otherwise, it just makes life difficult, especially if you are dealing it at scale. So that's the basic idea here. So just to summarize this particular architecture we finally came up with for this particular project. So this is the way things are. So as you can see, I just put, it's not a smartphone, it's like this Dabba phone which you can use to call this helpline, and then there is that is number 1. So there is this, so here it is. So then there is this menu that gets press 1 if you want help for X, press 2 if you want help for Y, that all happens. And this, once the call ends, there is no one talking with them yet. So you are just pressing something and you end the call. Then this comes to our server. Now what our server does is, based on what choices they have pressed, what language they have selected, so on, it assigns it as a task to some volunteer and it comes on their smartphone. Okay, right now we support only Android, so that is what it comes as. And this task assignment can be assigned to multiple people at the same time for redundancy. The moment one accepts, it is revoked from everyone else. So once you accept a task, notice that this completion call helpline is not immediately after this. You are in the middle of a meeting, you saw the task, you accepted it. Doesn't mean you call right away. You wait till the meeting ends, or maybe till the whole day ends. At the evening when you are free, that is when you tend to call. That is what calls when free. So when they call, our system is going to forward the call and they both have a conversation. So 5 is where this Q&A is happening between both of them. After they finish the call, they have to finish the task by answering some information, which is basically what question was asked, what answer did you provide. So this is what they enter. Okay. After this point on, our server will collect some feedback, in which case, so basically this task, this is a simplified version. What often happens is this Q&A is also provided as another task to another volunteer who sees whether the answer is a good answer. If they feel it's not a proper answer, the cycle will repeat again. That gets allocated to someone else who will call back again and do. So that is the quality inspection part of what I was talking about. So this is what the architecture is. So when we design, we do a modular design such that, so upfront itself we knew that there are many, so if you see this architecture, it applies in any domain. You can use it in the health domain to provide health advice, you can use it in education domain to provide career counseling advice, you can use it in agriculture domain to talk about crops, pesticides, livestock. So it's more or less whatever web pages are out there in the internet, think of it as some information you are providing, you can use it, it's independent in any domain you can use. And since you can use in any domain, there will be different types of people who will come. Each one will have their own set of requirements saying I want this, I want that, and so on. And designing, if you have a monolithic design, it's not easy to customize based on what people come from. So one of the things we do is right from the beginning we have this modular design where based on what configuration you choose, like some may be ready to do IVR, some may want only missed call model, some may want this type of scheduling of tasks, someone may want some other type of scheduling of tasks. So this is a very, so you in the configuration you say this is XYZ is what I want, and it will assemble everything based on XYZ and we come up with a solution. So that's what I mean by modular design, and a dashboard basically to see what's happening with when you are using this helpline. So that's, it provides a lot of statistics like response time, how many calls you're getting per month, what type of calls are you getting, and so on. So now that the prototyping is kind of done based on this architecture, so you get some students, they work on it, they build the system. Even before you approach others, you need to have a clear-cut idea of what are the advantages your system is providing, so that you can pitch your idea better to them. So it's important to note down what these advantages are. So for this specific project, so these are the basic advantage. It's very cost effective because when consumers are basically the clients who are calling, they are calling either a toll free number, or even if it's not a toll free number, it's, you just call and listen only for a minute, you select your choice and you're done. So it's only 1 minute call, and after that they're only receiving calls. So there's hardly any cost to these people. The service provider, basically, if you want to provide this kind of service, there is a call center setup you need to go through, and that can be very expensive. I'll cover this call center thing a little bit later. So then again, the second advantage is very accessible, because right from the beginning we designed it so that it's voice based. So you don't need major literacy, proficiency in technology. You are basically leveraging the expertise of the volunteers or these helpers. So that's why it's very accessible. It's also delay tolerant in the sense that volunteers can only help when they are free. It's flexible that way. Another big thing which also was one of our requirements is it preserves this privacy, where as you saw, all the calls go through this middle guy who is routing the calls between. So both will see one toll free number, they are not going to see each other's number. So that is also somehow, it's a generic design, it can support helpline for anything. It's easy management because we are hiding the volunteer phone numbers from others. So you can change your set of volunteers, does not matter, it's still you are exposing only a single phone number to the outside world, and we track a lot of performance of these volunteers so that you can help compensate their effort. So this is whatever it is. So that is one thing you need to know, what advantages your system provides. You also need to know how is this related to what is out there, because they will say, oh, they are also doing it, what is yours that is different. Of course, you say, okay, these X, Y and Z, but you should know exactly what X, Y, Z yours is better in relation to others. So with respect to this project, these are some of the related. So there are some companies in the social sector space called Gramvani and Awaaz, but lot of them do this pre-recorded IVR. In other words, there is no crowdsourcing or humans in the loop in what they do. So you have some, so for example, if it's for agriculture, they'll say, okay, pesticides, they'll say select what crop, rice, wheat. When you press wheat, they'll just play a standard recording. So you may have some other question, it doesn't answer, it's not flexible, it's very constraining, because how much can you play on an IVR? There is so much information, a small subset you are playing on the IVR, so it's not very, very limited information can be provided. There are also crowdsourcing apps and websites, but this is not accessible to the bottom of the pyramid because we need it to be voice based. JustDial, you may be aware of, it also provides, you call that, but it just provides a phone number of someone, but it really doesn't provide the kind of information access you want. I think what our work comes closest to is call centers, but there is a big difference between our work and call centers, which I will cover later. Actually, this call center business, when we started out, did not even enter the picture. Like I wasn't really even thinking of call centers, but later they turned out to be a bigger player. I'll get into these details later. So we were just looking it from a research perspective, and these are all the stuff we saw. Call centers are like commercial, they don't deal with social sector and stuff. So we didn't pay much attention there, but I'll anyway cover this in detail later. So that is where we are. Idea is there. We built a prototype, we understand the advantages of our system, we understand some related work as to what else is out there. Then naturally you start approaching people, and that is where the field trials start. So with respect to this project, we wrote to a bunch of NGOs, I talked with a few professors who have contacts in this space. I also, at least for prototyping, even though the intended use is bottom of the pyramid, unless someone uses, we don't get feedback. So I also approached some ITB student bodies. Overall, I think about 9 were approached. Of this 9, at this stage, only 2 showed interest. These two, Abhyuday, which is a career counseling, it's an IT student body which works, it does a lot of social service, and one of the service they do is do career counseling for municipal high school kids as to what career options they have. And another was this Ma and Sishu Poshan. Basically there is a doctor called Dr. Rupal, and she has a team of people who are trying to work towards eradicating malnutrition. So they provide a lot of nutrition advice to mothers. So these two showed some interest, and then even though we had a prototype which they can use, naturally as I said, which we anticipated from the beginning, they have their own requirements. They say we want it done this way, we want it done that way. So we actually had a 6 months discussion and refining session where we used to meet more or less almost every month once, because they will tell something, we will implement it, they will test it, then they will say no, we want something more, and this went on for these 6 months. And so just to give you kind of inputs that we got from these entities, this is only a subset, we got a whole lot of feedback. I am just telling some of the stuff that they told. So this nutrition group had prepared a lot of videos on how to care for a child and so on, and they wanted to be able to share this video material with the clients who are called. Naturally, our system does not have this video conferencing, all that kind of a thing. So we thought they have this URL for this particular video material. We'll just incorporate an SMS support where after the call, they'll just type the URL and that goes as an SMS to their caller, so that they can access, if they have internet access, they can access it via that. So that is one. The other requirement, which was also I think which other people have also requested, is a hierarchical helper model. So what basically they want is, in any group there are some people who are experts who are also very busy, and then some lower level people who are more free but they may not be experts. So that is the typical scenario you have. So when you are taking calls, you do not want to involve the experts unless there is something important. So again, in this nutrition group, regular stuff they may know, but if it is a premature baby, maybe these people do not want to handle it, someone expert has to come into the play. So they wanted a hierarchical model where you can reallocate, you talk back to that particular client, have some conversation, in the process you realize that this is beyond you, then you actually reallocate the task to someone higher up, and they get involved only after you reallocate the task. So that is the idea there with a hierarchical helper model. They also wanted something called a follow-up task, where you talk but you may say, okay, I will check on you after 1 week to see how things are, whether what advice I provided, is it working, not working, and so on. In which case they are not going to call you back, you want to call them back after 1 week. So for you to create those type of tasks, so this helpers can schedule new call tasks on their own. This is the follow-up task. And as more and more people started coming on board as helpers, each person had to be explained what this one was, what to press, what not to press, all those stuff. So we found it useful to have a tutorial in the app, so that you can get people on board. Local language support also, I mean when we build this app, at least for the volunteers, the helpers, it was in English, but a lot of them were also they were not so comfortable in English, so they wanted Marathi support, Gujarati support, whatever. So you can select the choice, and the menu navigating through the app itself takes on a local language. Autofill is where if someone is asking the same question again and again or whatever, you do not want to type again and again. So it tends to autofill for you, and then you can edit it. There were a lot of other requests which we haven't yet handled. People wanted support for surveys, to be able to chat with other helpers, mutual scheduling, where you call me at this time. I mean we We give the flexibility to the helper to call when they are free, but at that time the client may not be free. So, some mutual scheduling has to happen, video conference and so on. These are some of the things we are looking into right now, but it is not yet implemented. So, here is some of the screenshots of that particular app. So, when in this volunteer, so tasks comes like this. So, this is a new task.
How do you check or measure the trustworthiness of the volunteers?
Yeah, okay, fine. Maybe let me answer. So one of the approach that we have taken with this is that we are technical providers. We don't deal with recruitment of volunteers. We don't deal with outreach, advertising and all, because it is so domain specific, and it is, as I said, the solution is applicable across any domain. We don't have any expertise in any of these domains to take on the task of whether someone is good, someone is bad, how do you recruit, you don't even have the contacts to recruit. So, from the beginning our approach has been that this is a technical solution. We don't target the clients directly, we target organizations, basically NGOs that already have a base with the clients, who already have volunteers with them, and it is their responsibility to figure out who they are going to recruit, how they are going to compensate them, how they are going to advertise this helpline number. So, we are just a technical providers. That said, we do provide some mechanisms to check whether, so anything that you can do technically to ensure that someone, so for example, someone provided some question and answer, it may be crap, like nothing is useful. So, this goes as a verification task where 2-3 other people are checking whether this question and answer makes sense. You can also record all the conversations are happening between helpers and clients, and randomly check, someone can listen in to these conversations. This is also a task. So, it comes to a volunteer who will listen to this conversation and mark whether this person who has helped is good or bad, and if you see 1-2 negative marks against, random checks you can do, then you can dig in more to see how this user. So, this type of technical support we can provide, but nonetheless any NGO, when it is hiring these volunteers, we do expect them to conduct training sessions, and maybe they should answer a Q and whatever, take an exam before they can even become a volunteer. That due process we don't do, we expect the specific entity to be able to do that. Does that answer your question?
Is there any mechanism to handle client sensitive query?
No. So, one thing which we make very clear whenever we approach any of these things is this is not an emergency. For example, we have had some people approach us for suicide helplines. I said no, you cannot use this for that, because those type of things, this is delay tolerant. It's not like, I mean, you don't immediately, any medical emergency. See, again to some extent our system, I mean, we have implemented this. It also has these availability. In other words, when you are a volunteer, you can put in a calendar that I am available on XYZ days within these time blocks where I am ready to take calls, okay, that you can specify. And when a call comes and it sees that there is someone available within this number of people to take this call, it will directly connect, like in a call center. You know, a call center, you wait, you press connect me to a technical whatever, you get directly connected. That is there even in this. But if that somehow does not get connected because not enough people are there, or that person is busy, is not accepting the call, then it goes as a task, so that they can get back whenever you want. So, that model is there, but nonetheless, because there is some asynchronous thing where we don't guarantee that someone will pick up. Best, yeah, we are not. So, that is the basic idea, that we tell anyone who comes to us, we tell very clearly that no emergency, no anything which is delay sensitive should not be handled by this. So, here are some screenshots. As I was saying, this is a new task, this is an accepted task, this is a follow up task. Once you accept a task, this is the interface. When you press call, it will actually connect you to that other person. You can reallocate the task to someone else. Once you press completed, you have to fill this question and answer. You can specify what category it is in. You also, this is a feedback task where you can give, so you are seeing the question and answer and accordingly giving a rating to them as to whether it is good or bad. So this is the screenshots that we have. So here are all the trials that we started. So the first trial, as I said, was with this IITB student body that mentors municipal high schools kids. They provide guidance in these science, commerce, arts. So they basically recruited lot of these volunteers from local engineering colleges, and they get them here, train them on these are the typical questions and you should answer it this way. So they do that, and they did one big drive and they got some 150 volunteers from some many engineering, local engineering colleges, and that's their toll free number to access this particular helpline. This also I mentioned, she is a pediatrician who wants tackling malnutrition. They provide guidance on breastfeeding, child and mother's nutrition, and the volunteers are her team, nurses, nutritionists, lactation consultants, other doctors. In fact, this volunteer base is spread pan India, it is not just from here. There are people from Tamil Nadu, there are people from Punjab and so a few other places as well. So this is something that is working pan India. This is BIFE, which is an NGO that works in the agriculture space. They provide feedback on livestock management. There is an NGO, their staff itself are the volunteers for this, and that is their number. In fact, it has become a toll free now, I have to update the toll free number. And this is within our IITB again as a student helpline. This is the Dean Students Affairs Office. So this is the senior students mentor the junior students. You could potentially do through chat and other stuff, but still a lot of times they want to talk with someone. So as you can see, this is not the bottom of the pyramid, but the same thing can help in any setting where you want some customized, personalized information catering to your needs, where you want to talk with someone. That is what this is. So these are the 4 trials that are ongoing. Here is some statistics. So this is in a matter of about a year. As you can see, not that many calls have come. So career counseling had about 185 calls, this is 151 calls. These are the unique callers. These have so many helpers, but you can also see this, which is a very negative thing about that helpline, that they are not really responding to calls. So this is something like even after notifications, reallocating to someone else, still it is like a very poor workforce here. Maximum tasks per helper is about 10. This is very responsive, this one, because the pediatrician, she really ensures that they do a good job. Okay, so this is where the field trials are. As I said, we did some 4 trials, and then how do we evaluate how a field trial is doing. Those are some operational statistics, but evaluation can be more thorough. So this evaluation, at least what I am going to cover right now, comes more from an academic perspective rather than, because we are in academia, we tend to give an academic twist to it, but others projects may not take this type of evaluation. So this is, for example, the response time. As you can see, lot of the response time for this Ma and Sishu portion, 60% of the calls were handled within a day, whereas if you can see here, this is what greater than 7 days, still they are very high. That is why you see a very high response time for them. We also did this qualitative assessment where 40 participants we identified, 17 clients, 19 helpers and 4 trials that we had the heads of those organizations. Representations, as I said, from all these places. The clients had 10th pass to master's degree, that was the range of the clients. And there is a process called thematic binning where you take these scripts and identify what are the themes that are emerging. I won't get into too much detail here, I will just quickly pass on to, so for example, among all the interviews, 5 themes emerged. One theme is what is the need for this platform. So people told various things, it maybe satisfies client's need, it reaches better when there are less resources, this platform is better. So, for example, these are some of the quotes by some of the people that had that we interviewed. The other theme is what did people feel about the current platform. So, people commented on what are the advantages, what can be improved about the platform. In terms of advantages, what is the system related, information related. So, for example, improvement, people said we want better call coordination, installation, one or two commented on that it was not that easy to install. Information related, it will be good if we have a better response time, things like that. So, this is again some of the quotes that, so a lot of people in fact were very positive about the particular platform. The third theme was what did clients feel about this, again why do you need it, what kind of support they got from helpers, so conversation related improvements, all that. Again I will so this is some of the clients' quotes. Similarly, helpers' perspective, things like why were they motivated to become a helper. So, a lot of it is self-motivated, they want to help others. Training, they were already in this domain, so they didn't undergo any special training. But some of these, the career counseling guys, they underwent some training programs. What frequency they were doing, are they using SMS feature, all those were collected from the helper's perspective. And sustainability of the platform is fine, this platform is there, what is it required to sustain it? Again there are different, but at a high level this is, I mean it's too much text, but at the highest level the summary is that they find the platform good, but the outreach for them has been the biggest challenge. They are not able to advertise the number well, and the quality of volunteers also in some helplines has been very bad. So, they were not able to do things well. So, that is what the evaluation aspect is. Now, what are the lessons that we learned and what is the future direction? So, this is what I meant. We took on a technical role, and based on this, at the end of it also, we did not feel that we should take on anything more than the technical role, because getting into the responsibility of running a helpline in different domains where you are collecting is a very complex task. We don't have the expertise or whatever it is. So, we didn't want to get into that. We continue to prefer a technical role. Lot of entities, as I said, they have very poor reach, hardly some 5 on average. If there is some outreach, maybe it goes to 10-15 calls a week, but otherwise it's hardly 1-2 calls a week. Need for volunteers was also, even though this solution is quite cheap, the NGOs, some of the NGOs we covered, they are always struggling with money there. So, it's even for that, this is kind of turning out to be a costly solution. These are all not quite technical problems, but if you want a technical solution to work with them, you have to kind of handle these as well. So, that's the one. So, future plan is in the social, so it started in the social sector space. So, we were thinking of how to solve it for the bottom of the pyramid. So, we are still very much interested in this space, except that we now want to reach out to bigger NGOs who have larger footprint. Basically, they have bigger reach and bigger pockets also to be able to afford, even though it's simple, that is one thing. And what I want to highlight here is in the social sector, the focus is always on raising awareness. So, they all have these things that we want to raise awareness on nutrition, or we want to raise awareness on agricultural practices or some such thing. So, that is in providing, or they want to collect information on how many cows someone has or some such kind of a thing. Our solution also finds use in the commercial sector, and this is basically where you are pitching it as a replacement for call centers. And there you have tons of company, but of course we may not be able to meet the complex requirements of all these companies because they have a huge database, they collect a lot of stuff and so on, but nonetheless we are looking into these, in fact we are in talks with them and we are seeing what we can do here. So, here is the promised comparison between our solution with a call center. How does it work and why we feel ours may be a good. In a call center, there is a dedicated space. There is a call center setup, whereas in ours it can be work from home. You need desktop servers, switches, LAN, lease lines. These costs can run into lakhs. We just need smartphone with an internet access. Jio, though it's not super cheap. So this is our replacement for this. You have to pay monthly salaries, we pay per task. There is no redundancy. In other words, if you are paying monthly salaries, you employ just 5. Whereas here you can employ 50, but you just pay per task based on what they are doing. So there's a lot of redundancy in our system. Here you cannot recruit, no expert will sit in a call center and answer queries, whereas we can recruit experts. So our CAPEX and OPEX both are very low. So that's the pitch that we want taking in the commercial route. So this project from idea inception, which happened like 4 years back, though it didn't make, first 2 years it was like refining the idea, talking with people, getting some sense, doing some initial prototyping. Only once the prototype got done, the Tata Center got involved. So this was since 2 years after the initial prototyping. Technically, I mean, we understand, we are here at IIT Bombay, Technology Institute, Computer Science Department. So the software, we know exactly what to do there. That's not much of a challenge for us, but this has been the bigger challenge. We are still in this exploration, iteration phase. We are reaching out to people, and of course, a good team is also very important. This is also has been a bit of a challenge for us because we need someone who is very dedicated, interested in the cause to be able to do it. That is also something. Technically, we have a team. Technically, I have students, but they need to do some startup kind of they need to become a CTO. There was no one is ready to be. That's a problem there. So that's with respect to this project. So I'll take some questions with related to this project. Then I'll talk briefly about my other project. Any questions? No, we don't pay. As I said, so I'm saying when we say as a again, just reiterating, we are technical providers. Any organization, any NGO that wants to use it, they have to figure out the logistics of whether they want to pay the volunteers, not pay the volunteers. If they want to pay, they have to pay out of their own pocket. Why will we pay the volunteers? We are not in that space. But when we say pay per task, we do, for example, monitor technically how much time a volunteer is spending talking with someone, how many calls is a volunteer making, all that we track technically. This information is available for the organization. According to that, they can decide what payment model they want. So, for example, if they say, okay, pay this much amount, we have Paytm integration into the that is a technical solution we can provide. How much to pay, what to pay, that is the responsibility of the organization itself too. We don't get into, as I said, our roles are very clear. That said, in all the trials that we are taken, the volunteers are not paid. It is just intrinsic motivation to help. That is how things are, and some of these NGOs, they are paying them as staff. This is something, an additional responsibility for the staff to do on top of their regular jobs. See, lot of these, so this project so far has been done by master students that their salaries are also paid by the government. It's not that, and one of the master students who is a Tata Center pays their salary, but the salaries are not that much. So technically whatever was done, it's just been done with master students with their stipends being either paid by the government or by Tata Center. On top of that, we do have, so when people call, we have to pay, we have to buy this IVR service, we have to buy toll-free service, we have to pay. For the trials that are going, the cost, depending upon what your call volume is, It can be as low as 1000 per month. To, if you take toll free number and you are getting 100 calls, 200 calls per month, it can go up to 6,000-7,000. Still it is not huge. So this is the operational cost, in other words, we are not even including server cost and all. So when we support a helpline, that is the typical cost. So you can, if you are only getting few calls a week, you can just go for the 500 rupee model. That's good enough. 500 rupees is enough to pay. But if you want toll free, a lot of calls, then it will be more expensive. So the quality assessment, as I mentioned, is there are currently what we do is the Q&A that gets someone, I am a helper, I talk with someone. After the call ends, I am supposed to fill a question and answer. This question and answer is verified by 3 other people. That is the current mechanism. But we also technically can support where everything gets recorded. All conversations get recorded because it's going through the middle guy, that IVR. You just tell him, he will record. And storage space, of course, periodically you may have to prune it, but we have all those recordings of every conversation that is happening. These you can randomly, for a given helper, randomly pick and get it assessed by someone else to see how this person is doing and then rate that user. So typically if you have a volunteer, randomly pick, it's like a, as members of your company, you do that rating of your things, right? So you just pick 4-5 recordings of that guy randomly, go through them and see how they are doing. If you feel they are not up to the mark, then you have to train them better. That is this is the technical way in which we provide. But in addition to that, each NGO has to have some other checks and balances in place to ensure that the quality is met.
So we can assess at which management we are doing. We are assessing the quality. So we get to know that what is the efficiency of this project we are doing. So we can process. We are doing the recording the call all the job that is done by the candidate. So what is standard level of doing all the jobs? At which standards are in place?
See, this thing again, as I said, as an organization, you have a bunch of volunteers or employees whose job is to attend to calls. In some sense, like a call center, right? In this, whether they are doing their job or not, technically you can put in some mechanism which will finally maybe give a rating for a helper, which says, okay, 3 out of 5, 5 out of 5, depending upon how prompt, what's the response time, all that you can come up with an algorithm that will rate this guy. That is what we can do. This organization should come up, each organization will have its own process of assessing this, that of this maybe he has to pass X, Y and Z. Through this his response time should be less than 2 days, or the number of calls per month he should attend should be greater than 50. Some such thing will be there. So we can tell based on this where the employee stands. That we can do, but what exactly an organization wants will vary from organization to organization. So that has to be customized for a given organization. What processes each organization follows, I mean, I don't know per se what they follow. Any other questions? So I have this other project from Tata Center as well. We call this Bodhi Tree. So this is in the education space. Again, the motivation for this platform is, I think we are all aware of the quality of engineering graduates that come out. I mean, there are a lot of articles that say 90% of our engineering graduates are not fit for employment. Periodically you see all this. So the goal there is to basically I mean, I'm in academia, I love teaching. So at IIT, there's a lot of, not all do, but there are a lot of faculty who spend a lot of time trying to teach the latest. There's a methodology in how we teach and so on. So one of the things we feel lacking in the outside world is this access to quality instruction, but that alone doesn't solve the problem, because even if you provide access to quality, like you have now Coursera, edX, NPTEL, lot of content is there. Even if you provide just access to quality content, that is still being done by the students themselves. Like, it's not that as an instructor I will tell, often it is not the case, go watch this Coursera. I mean, as an instructor I am supposed to teach my students. It's I can't tell go watch Coursera and whatever, give your exams. That's not how things are done. So instruction quality is one important thing. There is exam quality is also very important, because if you do instruction quality and don't do exam quality, the students will focus on exams only. If you may teach nice concepts and all, but ask rote questions in the exam, people will bunk your classes and just know, okay, let's look at the last 3 years of question papers, this is the repeating pattern. They will just come, do the bare minimum and pass. So both go hand in hand, quality instruction, quality exams. Okay. So what we are doing as part of the Bodhi platform is a way for instructors to run courses with quality content and exams. So just to contrast it with this Coursera, edX and other platforms that are out there, if you see, they target students directly. In other words, if I am a student in India, I am attending college, some syllabus is going on there. Now if I am very dedicated, I will watch some other videos in Coursera, edX, NPTEL, understand something there on top, and maybe because I understood better, I may do well in this. Okay, that is the mode in which Coursera, edX are helping Indian students. What we have felt, by the way, when we started this Bodhi platform, which is now maybe 6-7 years old, we all started at the same time. Coursera was not there, edX was not there, we started here. They caught on because there's a lot of international, MIT, Harvard, lot of money got pumped in. So they had a global. Ours, unfortunately, there wasn't much support. So we've been doing only within IIT Bombay and so on. So from the day one, when we started this project, the focus was on the instructor and not the student. Whereas their focus is on student, they talk massive online where they are targeting students, we are targeting instructors. What do I mean by we are targeting instructors? The basic idea is that we have been using textbooks since hundreds of whatever, there's a book that we prescribe, we follow the textbook and students, you teach based on the textbook. So the idea with Bodhi is that it is a platform that hosts multimedia books. It's not a textbook, so you're trying to replace the textbook with what is a multimedia book. Now what does a multimedia book mean? Multimedia book has chapters, sections much like the textbook, but inside a section you have these videos, interactive videos. In fact, let me emphasize this point on interactive. Interactivity is where you are trying to replace what happens in a classroom. In a classroom, I write something on the board, I ask some questions, some students answer something, based on what they answer, I again continue. Okay, that is the interactivity that happens in a classroom when I do a traditional teaching. So we have tried to capture this aspect as part of the videos also, where you teach something, then you ask a question, everyone gets to answer that question because everyone is watching the video. It's not true in a class. Class only one gets to answer. Here everyone who is watching the video gets to answer and you proceed. So that's the interactive video. There are a lot of practice problems that are auto graded at the end of it. Okay. So this, in fact, now it's very similar to the other platforms also support all this, but as I said, our idea is that this platform will host these multimedia books, and as an instructor I have access to multiple books. I am teaching a course, I can assemble a course specific book. So I'll say I'll pick up this chapter from your book, I'll pick up this chapter from his book. and this is my course book, and based on this book I am going to use it in running my class. So, our platform is like an integration of this multimedia book with discussion forums that the Piazza and other tools provide, with lot of auto grading, auto self assessment that happens naturally within this particular, with Moodle type support where people can submit, people can download slides, everything. It's like a amalgamation of all this. So, that is where the Bodhi platform is. When you look at it right now, earlier there was lot of differences, but right now I think everyone caught on. It looks kind of similar to other platforms, but we target engineering colleges with engineering syllabus as done in these colleges. So, lot of the books that we do are like the prescribed textbooks of these colleges, which a faculty can use to run courses like in a Moodle, except that instead of Moodle doesn't support video and all, we kind of it's nicely organized and so on. And another big thing that we are doing in this space is a lot of focus on labs. So, we have, since I come from CS, I understand CS well. In the computer science, we have a laboratory for the C, C++, Python type of all auto graded. We have a huge, like I said, exams, we have a huge question bank of 200 quality programs which you can use as part of your exam. So, all these things come with a question bank of good practice problems, good exam problems and so on, so that they go hand in hand. So, we have networks course. So, there is a networks lab. So, again we have lot of mechanism of conducting these labs using the platform. So, we focus a lot on labs as well, because hands-on learning is also something that is very important. So, that project, this platform is also pretty mature. Right now, in fact, on 23rd, 24th, 25th, the next Monday, Tuesday, we do lot of this outreach where we invite, we target instructors, we don't open it up for the entire world, say whatever, we target specific instructors, judge their interest in teaching, in experimenting with new tools, get them here, train them on the use of these tools, and with the intention that once they go back, they will use these tools as part of the teaching. So, that is the outreach that we are doing as part of the data center stuff. So, along with this tool platform Bodhi, we also have another platform called SAFE. This is not funded by Tata Center, but we tend to use them both hand in hand. Where SAFE is a way to conduct exams in classrooms using students' phones themselves, but where they cannot cheat. That is the contribution of, because once you get a smartphone, you can easily cheat because you can put content within it, you can chat with your friend, all that. So, this has a lot of security mechanisms in place where you cannot really cheat, and you can actually conduct your mid-sem quizzes, everything in the classroom on students' smartphones when they come. So, that is both go typically hand in hand, because we do flipped classes where they say watch these videos, come to class, take a safe quiz, then do some hands-on stuff, and that is how our classes get done. And this methodology we train when people come. So, that is with respect to the other project. Any questions on this project?
Has this been successful because
Yes. So, even within IIT Bombay, the number of people who do flipped within my department, I think only about 3 or 4 courses run that way, and with mixed results as well. So, when I run flipped classes, because I am invested in whatever the methodology, whatever I put lot of care, effort in my material, this, that and all, the feedback is positive. In fact, lot of, I get very high teacher evaluation scores. Lot of those things also is like every class should be flipped. That is the kind of feedback they get, I mean based on mine. And there are people who want to do flipped without due diligence. They will get, so it will be a success based on the instructor's efforts and what is it that you need to really buy the idea, and you should also ensure that just flipped won't work. You have to use this tool safe also, because one of the reasons for developing this tool safe was a result, because what was happening was, you say watch these 2 videos, come to class, and then we'll have a discussion on what we watched, do some practice problems, so on. No one watches and comes, because it's flexible, right? I mean, you don't have to watch, they just come showing up without no preparation and all. What do you do in class then? I mean, hardly 5 watch, 50 don't watch. You can't have a conversation in a class. That's when we said every day, every class, there is a quiz on what they were supposed to watch, and it accounts for 10% of their grade. It's not a trivial thing where you can say ditch it, or even 20% if required. Then they study and come. I mean, when I do, so all these other mechanisms you have to go hand in, otherwise it won't succeed. So I would say it's a very, so in fact when we train based on our experience, we tell them like, when you do it, even sometimes people are like, okay, you watch video, what do I do in class? They have already watched the content, you may discuss something, but how long can you discuss? The class is at least 1 hour, 1.5 hours. What do you do in 1.5 hours? So if you want to start making them do practice problems, you need a good question bank of practice problems to be able to do, and that you need to. So that also we supply. We say this course comes with this week you solve these problems. We want to have a discussion. This is like lesson plans they have, for some younger kids they do this. So we have a lesson plan for a given course. This week you do XYZ. In the class you cover XYZ. That type of lesson plans we get, so that people can potentially, but it is a big function of the instructor enthusiasm and
one small thing, Moodle is, it was free of cost earlier.
Yes.
Is it still free of cost
yes,
or
yes,
charge?
No, I think it's free of cost.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want lot of additional, even then I think there may be companies who take Moodle and on top of it customize and add lot of additional functionality, they may charge, but the Moodle per se, whatever is a open source free of cost.
How to motivate students for practicing doing programming? This especially for the newcomers, first years.
I thought they are naturally very interested, because all this Hacker Earth, blah, some 10,000 websites are there.
They are good.
Huh.
On bulk means on mass is problem.
Yeah, mass is, typically as you said, in a class only 5% will do this extra work. 95% won't do anything more than what is needed to pass. So these type of things, see, there is a question bank, and if anything you have to have control over their grade, only then they will put in. So even in our thing we say you you do this exam, only then whatever, and that exam ke liye some preparation is needed, then they'll do all this. So you have to have control over their grade. It cannot be like just show up for the final. So periodic assessment I think is a very important thing, which as a teacher also, students also appreciate it. They may hate you at the beginning because you are doing a quiz every class, or having one programming assignment every week where they have to do it, but midway through they see that they are doing much better in this course than any other course, because they are on top of things. This is also something where as a feedback we got that, so if you really want them to do well, you should give them periodically, every week give them 2-3 programming assignments, make them count towards the grade, otherwise they won't do.
And here also problem, you should copy from internet everything.
No, so that is the issue, that is the thing is, so again our platform has that plagiarism check, copy free operation. For example, it locks into the IP, you can't generally, and during that we disable in external internet access. So if it's a lab, the way we do handle it in IITB is when people come, while they are doing the lab, they don't have access to any other resources other than to the platform where they have to submit the code. So they cannot, they are sitting there doing it, and if they cut paste from their friend and all, we run plagiarism checks so that it's quite obvious that they have copied from some their friend and all. So some of these mechanisms are needed. If it's a take home kind of a thing, yeah, it's very easy to copy. They'll all submit the same code. Of course, you can run plagiarism checks later also, but how much can you, it's not, how much can you, so we have these, so we do labs in a dedicated space where they come. While they are doing the lab, they don't have internet access. They have to do individually. They cannot change their computers also without our explicit. They cannot log in SSH to their friends, get there. All that we have a mechanism to prevent. On top of it also, for whatever we do have plagiarism checks as done as part of it, and then we run labs like this. Then there's no question of them copying. And we do it every week. Every week they have to come, do 3-hour lab, 3-4 programs they have to go. And that counts towards some 10-20% of their grade. Or even more. If it's a lab, it's like 50-60% of their grade. Okay, thanks for